Hey everyone, it's good to see you again. I want to preface this lesson to say if you hear weird noises or whatever, I'm recording from a hotel, so it's people walking around being loud. Sorry. So we're going to be starting a mini block, if you will, about if functions in Excel. So while this video and presentation is going on, make sure you have a pen or pencil, I don't care what kind, and a piece of notebook paper, which is in the classroom right next to the front door if you remember. So make sure you have those things handy. I'll give you just a second to get those. And also don't forget to sign in if you didn't already. So we're going to be going through this PowerPoint. You should also have a worksheet in front of you as well. We'll get to that in a certain part of the PowerPoint and I'll let you know. At the very end, we have a mini assignment as well. So if you are not paying attention to the presentation, you won't be able to do the work at the end. So please make sure you write down everything that you think is pertinent, which is most of it. All right, so moving on. Logical functions. You don't necessarily have to write this part down on this slide, but just know when I'm talking about a logical function, that's a group in Excel that is if, and, or, and not functions, as weird as that sounds. We're going to be talking about each one of these, and obviously today we're going to talk about if functions. Those get a little bit more complicated, and then we can actually combine these things together and create different conditions and testing conditions. But we're going to start out simple, just talking about if functions for now, but just know it's part of this overall umbrella of logical functions in Excel. So what exactly is an if function? This is a test to see if a condition is met and returns either a true or false value. This part you do need. So the most important thing to know is that it tests something, right? We're asking Excel a question and we want a response. That response is either going to be true or false. So it's not going to be like, Excel spreadsheet, tell me who I'll be dating next year. It can't read your mind or read the future. All it can do is look at a cell and compare it using mathematical or logic type questions, which is why it's a logical function. So it's a test to see if a condition is met and either it's going to be true or false. And that true and false would be conditions that you set in that function. So if not, make sure you write at least that it's a test and it will return either a true or false value. All right, and if y'all need to, y'all can pause this as a class just to let Ms. Sparks know. All right, the purpose of the if function is to test data on our spreadsheets, and this is going to save user time. So on a test, if I were to ask, like, what's the benefit or why would you want to use these types of logical functions, your answer on the test would be it saves you time. Really, I mean, could you go through an entire spreadsheet line by line and ask yourself, is this greater than 50? Is that greater or less than 50? And go through and write all of your answers? Yes. But as you've already seen in your previous units in Excel, it's just easier to use a function. It's going to save you a lot of time and trouble. So the benefit or the purpose of it is literally just to save you time. All right, here's the good stuff. This slide is extremely important. So I'm going to chill for a second. I'm going to give you a minute to write this stuff down. All right, so we're talking about syntax here. This is the format of how we actually use the function itself. Now, it's called an if function or equation, so obviously we're always going to start it with the word if, and it always has an equal sign, just like any other function in Excel. So right off the bat, any test question in this if block is going to be equal sign if. It's always how you start it. After that, you have a set of parentheses. In that parentheses is going to be starting out with the logical test. This is going to be a little murky on this slide, but I'll explain it in the next couple slides. Now, just like in math or English class or anything else, if you have a set of parentheses, it's a set, right? You have an opening and a closing parentheses. So if you have equal sign if parentheses, blah, 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 you always have to have the ending parentheses. On this blocks test, this syntax and format is so important. If you have an opening parentheses but no closing one, A, not only is Excel going to be confused, but B, you're going to miss it as an incorrect answer on a test. So all of these commas, parentheses, etc. are super duper important. All right, the third one says there's individual brackets on the inside of those parentheses, and that's where your true and false response values are going to be. So first you have equal sign if, you have your test, and then you have your true and false values. Again, we'll see what this looks like in the following slides. Now, the true and false values, so you're asking Excel a question. Is cell B3 this? And it's either going to say yes or no, true or false. It's a binary 1 or 0, okay? So you can have true or false. You do have the option, though, to just have 1. So I can say, in this whole range of cells, do they equal 70? If it's yes, they do equal 70, then put true. If it doesn't fit that criteria, it's not going to give you a response. So, and you can pick false or true as long as you have one of them. It's very important. And then in blue down at the bottom, it says made up of 3 arguments. That's really, it's like the 3 different sections of the syntax of your function, if that makes sense. We'll look at it in just a second and it'll make more sense. But first you have the name of the function, that equal sign if parentheses, okay? And then after that you have your test. What if it's true? What if it's false? And then you have your closing parentheses. These 3 sections, or these 3 arguments, the test, the true, and the false, they're all divided by a comma. Again, the syntax and format is so important on this. So make sure you have everything on this slide. If you don't, let the sub know and she can pause it for you guys. Okay, so here's what it actually looks like. I'll pause here for a second. Make sure you write this down. You're definitely going to need it. This is what I've been describing to you guys. The equal sign if, your opening parentheses. After that, you have your logical test is your first piece of your argument that has 3 pieces, right? So our first argument or condition is a logical test. Everything, it says set by user, but really everything is set by you, right? Excel doesn't know the question until you tell it. So logical test, comma. Is it equal to something? Is it greater than? Does it have this word in there? That's your question that you're phrasing to Excel. Then you have your comma. And after that is your value if true and value if false. So this could be true, false, yes, no, pass, fail, over budget, under budget, hot, cold, freezing, whatever. Okay, these are conditions that you want Excel to show you once you've run the function. It doesn't always have to be true and false. And remember, you only have to have one, at least one, but typically you'll have 2. And these are going to be what you want the computer or the program to show you after you've run the if function. So if B2 is greater than 10, put yes or no. Okay. Again, pause this if you need to. You really need to make sure you write this down. Everything from the equal sign, every comma, the brackets, everything. Okay. Super important. All right, so here's an example that we'll be looking at, and up at the top I put the syntax up there for you. Let me get my trying to get my little laser pointer up here if it'll let me. Okay. All right, so we have our 1, 2, and 3. Logical test is going to be your 1. True value is 2, and false value is 3. Again, you could just have the true. You don't have to have the true and false. So here's our example. It says equal sign if C2 is greater than or equal to 70. So that's our question. That's number 1. That's our logical test up here. Is it going to be a pass, which is number 2 up here, value of true. And then our 3, value of false, is going to be fail. Now, anytime you have a word in Excel, you always put those quotation marks around it. That's why we have it around pass and fail. So here's some notes and takeaways from down here. The test is C2 greater than or equal to 70. That's number 1. That's our question. our results are going to be either pass or fail. So I expect to see these two things in any cell that this function is applied to. If I get something else, that means there is an error of some kind and I need to go look at it. Then text results are always going to be in quotation marks, okay? That's just how Excel knows that you're talking about a specific word. It's not so much smart that it knows that it's a word. It just knows that whatever's in quotation marks, from here to there, it's all one thing. It's not going to give you the letter P. It's going to say the word pass. So that's just how you let it know. You're going to put a comma in between each argument in the function. So between 1, 2, and 3, you see the 2 commas there. That's super important. And you should be used to that from other functions already. And then always close out the parentheses. So if you have your opening parentheses after if, at the very, very end, you have your closing parentheses. Now, the syntax up at the very top in black, I know it gets a little confusing on the value of true, value of false. Those little square brackets around value of true, value of false, those are to help you visually see the different sections in the format of the function. So those brackets do not follow you whenever you're typing it into Excel. It looks exactly how it's going to look like in blue, where you separate it with commas and you have quotation marks around it. So just want to clarify that for you guys. Whoops. Okay. So our logical arguments is going to be less than or greater than or equal to. We need to let Excel know what we're wanting to know. It doesn't know our question unless we ask it. A lot of the functions and the brain, if you will, of Excel is all based on math and math equations. You should be familiar with less than, greater than, equal to, etc. From math class since elementary school. But a lot of times my students will forget, especially when you have a lot of these functions one after another and you're looking at all these greater and less than signs, it kind of gets a little confusing. So I put this up here for you guys. Greater than and less than symbols. It sounds dumb, I guess, but this is an easy way to remember it. If you have an alligator, he's always going to want to eat the larger number, right? So we have on the left side 14 and 50. 14 is less than 50, so therefore his open mouth would go towards 50, just like this less than gator right here. Over here we have 90 and 5. 90 is greater than 5, so we have our greater than gator over here. As long as the open part of the mouth is trying to eat the larger number, you're good to go. Okay, so that's just an easy way to remember it, especially if you're a visual person like me. All right. And if you wanted to, in your notes, if you want to draw a little alligator and put that on there, by all means do so, because like I said, if you're on a test and you have all the 25 of these if functions and they're getting kind of jumbled up, look at this and that'll help you make sure that you're keeping your symbols straight. All right, so our logical tests, they're going to ask a cell to compare a specific cell like B3, A2, G9, whatever, to a number or text, to a certain value, and it's going to see if it matches. So in that picture with the guy who's thinking and it has the 2 arrows, there's 2 options here. A computer is very black and white, 0 and 1. Either yes, it fits this, or no, it doesn't. So we have to phrase that question and give it 2 different paths. Is the cell going to be more or less than a number? Does it have this word? Is it pass or fail, etc.? But it doesn't know what's pass or fail or yes or no until you define it in the question. So we're going to take this for a test drive. Up here is a sample spreadsheet. I didn't put the rows on there. I just created random rows. So we have A, B, C, and D. And our first question is going to be, is B2 greater than 10? Give a yes or no response. So what I don't want on worksheets and tests, because you'll get it wrong, a lot of people are like, oh, I'm just going to look at B2. Yes, it's greater than 10, so the answer to this is yes. That is not what we're looking for at all. We're looking for the actual equation here. So is B2 greater than 10? We're looking for the actual formula here. So like always, you start with an equal sign if parentheses. And if you want to write this stuff down, you're more than welcome to. So always the equal sign and our opening parentheses. So what are we actually testing here? We want to know if B2 is greater than 10. Remember, the mouth of the alligator is going to eat the larger number or value. In this case, we want to know if B2 is bigger, so the mouth is going to be pointing towards the B2, than 10. And we want to make sure that the computer is going to give us a yes or no response. That's going to be our value if true and our value if false. So our answer here would be equal sign if parentheses, our test, B2 is greater than 10, comma, and our responses, our true and false, are going to be in those quotation marks. So quotation, yes, ending quotation, because there's always two, an opening and a closing, comma to separate it, and then our third piece of our argument is no. So our set of quotation marks again, and then we have to close it out with our ending parentheses. You have to have that entire thing for it to work. Like I said, syntax is super duper important. Again, if you want to write that example down, you're more than welcome to, but you'll be walking through several as we go along. All right, does A9, I just picked your row number, does A9 say cat? Give a yes or no response. Again, I'm not looking for the obvious. Well, of course it doesn't say cat, I can see that. What I'm looking for is the actual function. So we've got to ask ourselves, how are we going to start this out? It's going to be equal sign if, opening parentheses. Every single time. Should be easy. After that, what are we testing? Well, we want to know, does A9 say cat? So that's another way of saying, does this set of characters match this other set of characters? So how we'd write that is A9 equals cat. But remember, anytime we have a word, it has to be in opening and closing quotation marks. So that would be my little test right there. A9 equals cat. And then your responses are going to be yes and no. Just like the word cat, those go in your quotation marks and they're separated by commas. So here's our answer right here. Equal sign if, parentheses. Our test is A9 equal to cat, separate it with the comma. It's either going to be yes in quotation marks, comma, or it's going to be no in quotation marks, and always end with your ending parentheses. That's going to be your answer right there. Alrighty, you should have your worksheet in front of you. You should be able to finish questions 1 through 5 on your worksheet. You have 8 minutes. I'm going to step away for a little bit from the computer, and this video will automatically count down the 8 minutes. So go ahead and get started. This is not a group effort. Use your notes you've been taking and start working on 1 through 5 by yourself. And then once this time is up, then we will go through and look at our answers together. All right, everybody, let's see how you did. You should have had plenty of time to get questions 1 through 5 done. As we go through these, if you notice that you got one wrong, then go ahead and just correct it on the worksheet. You will be turning this worksheet in at the end of class, but not your notes. So for now, though, just go ahead and hang on to it. All right, here we go. Question number 1, does the value in A1 say hello? Give the yes, no responses. A couple things to remember here is that anytime you have text, it's going to be in quotation marks, like we said before, and the true value is always listed first, assuming that you have 2 responses. So we're looking at A1. Obviously, A1 says dog, so no, it does not say hello. But what are we actually asking here? We're asking if the value of A1 equals hello, and that always has to be in quotation marks. So we started off with equal sign if, open parentheses, A1 equals quotation marks hello, comma. Now we have our value of true and our value of false. So our true value is going to be yes in quotation marks, divide that with a comma, and then no in quotation marks, ending it with our closing parentheses. So if you forgot any of the equal signs, quotation marks, parentheses, or commas, make sure that you emphasize that and correct that on your worksheet, because those are very, very important. Number 2, is the value in B5 less than or equal to 60? Give true or false responses. So on this one, the less than alligator is going to be facing to the right, and your true value is always listed first. So we're looking at B5, which is obviously 55. So is it less than or equal to 60? So we always start with our equal sign if, open parentheses. We're asking about B5. We're wanting to know if it's less than or equal to 60. So that means the alligator mouth is not trying to eat the B5. We're trying to see if it's less than. So it's going to be open towards the 60. You have your equal sign, 60, comma. Make sure you have the comma. And then our true and false responses, make sure you have the quotation marks around those separated by a comma. At the very, very end, you have your ending parentheses, just like always. All right, number 3, did the student's grade in C9 pass or fail? So this one can be a little tricky, and there's actually more than one correct answer. You could phrase it as like above and below 70 is a pass or fail, right? That's our benchmark line. But if you get exactly 70, then you also pass. So it's not just as simple as above or below. So on the first example here, I have if C9 with the opening of if and all that, is C9 greater than or equal to 70? Because if they got a 70 on their grade, they still pass. If it's above a 70, they also still passed. So then you do comma, and then you have your pass and fail, each in their own set of quotation marks, separated by a comma, and then your ending parentheses. Or another way you could look at it is, well, if 70 and above is all passing, then below 70, not including 70, but below it, is going to be failing. So in this case, equal sign if, open parentheses, if C9 is less than 70, separate it with your comma. In this case, if it is true that it's less than 70, that means they failed. So now you have quotation marks around fail, comma. If it's false, it's not below 70, that means they passed. So quotation marks, pass, closing parentheses. So this gets a little tricky here because there's 2 different ways to kind of look at these numbers. But as long as you have one of the 2 that's up here and all in the correct order, you're good to go. If you would like to, on your worksheet, write both of them down, you're more than welcome to do that as well. All right, number 4. If cell G2 is 90, what would the response be? So if G2 is greater than or equal to 0, you have your separations of commas, and you have your quotation marks around true and false. Your answer would be false. So 90 is not greater than or equal to 100. Obviously, it is less than. So it does not meet the criteria. Therefore, it is the false response. And the false response in this case is literally the word false. All right, number 5. List 4 things that are wrong with this function. So if, open parentheses, B2 equals hello, comma, no, comma, yes, close parentheses. There's a couple things wrong here. Hopefully you got most of them. Number 1, where's our equal sign? every single time we always started out with equal sign F open parentheses every single time across the board. Just get used to writing that every single time. Don't shorthand it on worksheets and quizzes and stuff. Always put that on there because that's exactly what we're going to be typing into Excel. All right, number 2, we need to have our, basically 2 through 4, our quotation marks around our words. So is B2 equal to hello? And then our response words would be no and yes. Okay, if you got something different, we're about to talk about it in just a second, but these are the errors in the syntax of the function. Now, some people say, well, wait, shouldn't it be B2 equals hello, comma, yes, comma, no, because it's always value if true first, and then value if false last before closing parentheses. Yes, it is always true and false. However, the yes, no, true is not always yes and false is not always no, just like we saw with the pass-fail grade example just a few questions before. So no, they shouldn't be reversed. It just depends on the situation. So at the very beginning, I mentioned that each one of these arguments, the 3 sections of the function, these are all defined by the user. So just because you have a yes-no response does not mean that true is yes and false is no, okay? If I said any grade that is equal to or above 70, yes is passing, no is failing. However, if we had the other one where we said anything less than 70, yes, or the true function is failing, the false function is passing. So just be really careful. Computers are not trying to trip you up or anything. Like, it's seriously black and white, follow the logic. So if you're on a test or something and you're not sure which order this should be in or whatever, literally just break it down. Say, okay, how do I start this? Equal sign, if, etc. What question am I asking? Make sure you have any words in quotation marks. Make sure you separate it with the comma. After that, what is my value if true? What am I asking here? Am I asking pass, fail? Am I asking who's passing? Or am I asking who's failing? That will be the difference in between no, yes, and yes, no. Okay. I'm sure you guys, if you have any questions, you can message me or ask each other about it, but I think it'll be fine. All right. Just a friendly reminder, those response values, you only have to have one. So the example down there in red, it says equal sign if, parentheses, B5 is 53, then yes. So if B5 is indeed 53, it will say yes. However, if B5 is like, 12, then you're just not going to get the yes response. So on a test, if I'm like true or false, you have to have a value of true and a value of false. That's false. You don't have to have both of them. But true or false, do you have to have at least one? That is true. Because otherwise, you're asking a question, but Excel doesn't know how to answer you if you don't give it a yes or no true false value to pick from. Alrighty, so we have a little bit of time left in class. Your assignment is going to be encoding a secret message, okay? So on a piece of paper, I want you to draw a sample Excel spreadsheet. Make sure it has the A, B, C, etc., the columns labeled at the top, just like mine were on the worksheet. And then you're going to use a list of if functions to get specific response words that will complete your coded message. In this case, you're not just going to use true, false, yes, no, pass, fail. Okay, you're going to have to get creative with it. I want you to get out of the mindset that this is a yes, no scenario. This is a logic function, not a yes, no function. So your message must be between 6 and 10 words. Here are some examples. Now, don't use my examples. If you change 1 to 2 words, it's still my example, okay? So don't use it. I think the bottom part got cut off, but we're going to be doing a coded message. So, I kind of went along with the CIA theme. You don't have to. I really don't care as long as it's school appropriate and not offensive. In between 6 to 10 words. So you could have like, go left on street, package in mailbox. Meet at noon in 2 days. Cover blown. Do not return to location. Mission complete. Return to main base for report. Anything 6 to 10 words, okay? Make sure you have your spreadsheet at the top, okay? Then you're going to have your list of functions. So if it were me on a piece of notebook paper, which again, is by the classroom door in that box. I would have a couple lines that are blank in between each one of these, so it gives you room to actually solve or write down the responses for each one of these. So your spreadsheet up at the top, okay, underneath that is going to be your list of functions. If you have 7 words in your coded message, you're going to have 7 functions. If you have 8 words, it's going to be 8 functions, okay? And then for, let's say it's meet at noon in 2 days. My first function, my value of true, my value of false might be value of true is meet, value of false is hide. Okay, and they don't have to be polar opposites like, you know, white, black, top, bottom. It can be whatever, okay? These value of true, value of false, this is all set by you, okay? Don't forget, for good exercise and getting used to these functions, if you want to do like greater than, less than, equal to, a combination of, you can do it to words, or you can do it to numbers. So you can use a combination of words and numbers in your little miniature spreadsheet. Make sure that you have the columns and rows actually clearly labeled though. That way whoever does your worksheet and solves your problems will actually be able to solve it. So after you're done with this, make sure you turn your worksheet and then this coded message paper, make sure your name's at the top and your class period, turn those into the box on the wall, and then your notes over this presentation that we've been talking about, these notes need to go in your backpack. You're responsible for keeping up with those. I haven't decided if you can use them on a test or a quiz or not. I will let you know. But if you lost yours and I'm letting you use it on a quiz, that's, you know, if you care about it, keep it. If not, don't be responsible. It's up to you. All right, so I will leave this up here for now. Or the sub can just pause the video on this. Make sure it's 6 to 10 words, a function for each one. Include your spreadsheet at the top. If you have any questions, ask the sub. This is not a group project, so it should be quiet. Use your notes to help you out. Make sure you're using all the complete syntax and function. I want quotation marks, parentheses, commas, equal signs, all that kind of good stuff. Once you're done with that, again, turn it into the box on the wall, and we'll see you tomorrow.